hide behind the cloak. And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog, what's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Speeding the facts.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. I'm Andy Kennedy. And here at Hair of the Dog, you can be assured of two things: good conversation and bad lighting.
What are you trying to say, Andy?
I'm not naming names, Kerri Barber. Good morning, by the way. My lighting is just as shitty as yours.
Well, all right, look, I have gone through many different, in the last week alone, I have light kits. I'm trying. I'm trying.
As you find them in your packed boxes, you're bringing them out and trying them? Yes.
Right, I am still living out of a suitcase, and this particular shirt 20 minutes ago was a wrinkled mess at the bottom of one, but I was like, it's clean. So
Check it over to make sure it hasn't been used to clean anything like automotive.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the level of, it's a lesson in humility, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Good,
So.
excellent, because I think you need one. And just for no particular reason.
Why not? We all need one. We all need
Sure,
one. Especially
sure.
especially the way that the universe is working right now. We're all kind of getting a reset in priorities. Some of us, anyway. Some of us are getting a reset. Others are.
Yes. Some of us would like to see a reset.
Mm.
And by the way, as a side note, yesterday in my the list of things to do outside required a bucket of soapy water that just happened to stay outside. And this morning when I let the dogs out, it was frozen. So welcome to Frozen Friday. But that's only
what we
here.
should have called it.
That's only here, right?
Well, we're back up into the 60s here in New Mexico, so I'm kind of happy with it. So no complaints.
Good,
No
good. I hope you sweat.
Such venom, Andy, on a Friday morning. I'm shocked.
Sorry, I thought that was my restaurant voice.
Oh.
But it is COVID, right? So, that voice
Yeah.
really doesn't get used very much anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, actually, that's a really nice pivot into our conversation this morning. So, what we're gonna try to do is thread the needle on a look back at the beginning of this year in February and March, carry forward into where we are now, and what we're going to see in the coming days. So, whether it turns out in a positive light really depends on us and how we respond to what's going on right now. So this is the conversation that we need to have, especially on this Friday, regroup before the election, because I cannot say this enough, for people who think that if the election goes blue, everything's going to be fine. Doesn't work that way. So what we do right now and in the coming weeks really will determine how the rest of our year goes and into 2021. So you ready? Let's get started.
Absolutely. I think we need to describe the country going blue in terms of the lips of a small child that's been in a pool too long, or
Right.
or in terms of balls, I think.
Oh, exactly. So all right, Andy, let's put up our first graphic. It's all about Wall Street.
Ta-ta-ta-ta.
Right. And I cannot, so when I go out on social media and have conversations with people, which this is not the totality of the entire population, but there's enough of it out there where people forgot how the initial response to the COVID pandemic happened. We're all well versed on how the Trump administration dropped the ball and denied everything. But there was something going on in the Fed with Steve Mnuchin behind the scenes, where he actually set up camp in Capitol Hill in a little conference room, and he was pulling in members of Congress to explain to them how money actually works. He had to literally explain to members of Congress how the federal appropriations process works. And he was working with Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, and this is how the first wave of stimulus came out. Now, not the first wave that you saw, not the first wave that went to unemployment or paycheck protection. This was the first wave that went to Wall Street. So I don't know if people recall the headline where they said we are going to pledge at least $1 trillion with a T, $1 trillion available to Wall Street per day.
Per day. For a month.
Right.
30
That's
trillion.
Yeah, that's a lot of cake. So, so while we're talking about deficits and everything else, all of that conversation went to the wayside because big banks needed to remain solvent. So we're talking about your JP Morgan Chase, your Wells Fargo, your Bank of America. All of those banks got their trillions right off the bat. And then we started to negotiate about the CARES Act. So this was the whole concept of trickle down in play today. So their thought was, if the banks cannot remain solvent, if we can't shore up the banks, then all of that woe is going to trickle down. Or more realistically, they thought we need to protect the stock market and Wall Street and screw the little guy, which is kind of what happened.
That might be a little bit of both, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So this article that Andy's put up here, I think is very telling, because this is what they're talking about right now. If you recall, we had the CARES Act for paycheck protection for Main Street businesses to keep their people on the payroll. That has since expired. And a lot of that money actually went to cronies, but so that is expired, yet they're still talking about the next wave of handouts to Wall Street, right? And that's an important point to keep in mind as we go through the rest of this conversation. So what we're going to talk about is evictions. And these big banks on Wall Street are the mortgage writers, right? So if you own a home, chances are you didn't pay for it out of pocket. You probably got a mortgage from one of these big banks. So back in February and March, that bank got paid for your mortgage at the same time you were paying for your mortgage. So I know that they double dipped on mine. So the same thing goes for the landlords. If you own property that you rent out, either a house or apartment building, your mortgage was already paid out of those handouts that went in February and March. And here again, with this article, you can see they're getting ready to get paid again, but they didn't send you a notice and say, no, don't worry about making your payment this month, did they?
No, of course
I didn't
not.
get one. Yeah.
Or even a thank you note.
No, not even a card. Oh my goodness. I'm just like, wow. So all of this is happening behind the scenes, and you may not realize it. The mortgage writers got paid and are about to get paid again. The mortgage holders, not necessarily. So what it did is set up a scenario where the landlords and the renters, or the mortgagees, were fighting each other. This is where they love to have us, where we're fighting each other over scraps and not paying attention to what's going on above us, right? Mm-hmm. So this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about the moratorium on evictions and this little loophole that always find, they're very creative and very smart, the loophole that they have found to continue evictions, but not necessarily because you haven't paid your rent or your mortgage. They found another way around this. And I have to give a shout out to Alex. Alex approached me on Twitter and sent me this story, and he asked for help on elevating what's going on, particularly in Illinois. Alex lives in Illinois. And he referred us to our guest who's coming on today, Nick Dodson. So thank you. And we do pay attention when you send us information and tips and stories. So this is one of them that came from one of our avid viewers who wanted us to talk about this subject. And I think it's very timely because it can potentially carry forward into the next economic collapse that they are predicting for 2021. Okay, so Andy, let's put up the next one from was it Vice? So this particular story came out in May, and here's what I'm talking about. When there was talk of implementing a moratorium on evictions, you had landlords who were not getting paid because people were getting laid off. All of these things that were happening on Main Street were affecting people's ability to pay rent, right? So who does that leave in the trick bag? The landlord. So landlords were getting pissed. Some of them, arguably, were trying to get out their low income people and put in people with a higher income. Some of that was going on. But what they were trying to do is make sure that they had enough to pay their mortgage because they didn't want to be destitute financially either. So here's a story that they were actually trying to get people to leave. Now, all of this is illegal. A landlord by law, and I believe this is in all 50 states and territories, a landlord cannot shut off your utilities and then try to evict you, right? So what that means is if you're renting an apartment or a house, and with that comes certain utilities like garbage, water, electric, and then your landlord decides they want you out because you're having trouble paying the bill, or maybe you represent a financial risk because of credit score or whatever it is. So they shut off your electricity or your water and then proceed with evictions, right? So Andy, you and I talked about this yesterday. It reminded me of the flashback from Flint, Michigan. And most people don't know what was happening in Flint. So in Flint and in Detroit, you have the two areas with the highest water bills in the entire country. Now we know in Flint, you were paying this exorbitant water bill for toxic water that was coming into your home, but you were still expected to pay it. And what was happening in Flint is if you weren't paying your water bill, your house could be foreclosed. And the foreclosure process took almost 2 years. Well, what they did was they changed the law in Flint and in Michigan to fast track those evictions. So if you're a homeowner with all of your money and investment tied up in your home, and you now have this toxic water coming in and you weren't paying your bill for whatever reason, you're sick, something like that, your home was being foreclosed and you were being evicted because you didn't pay your water bill. Right? So then Flint and Michigan decided to do something a little bit bigger. They decided, well, since we have all these evictions and they called it blight, they had a quasi-government agency come in and start selling these homes where people had been evicted. And we had one of our Bernie folks who actually, and I forget her name and I apologize, but she actually caught the gentleman who was in charge of this organization on tape at a bar disparaging Black people and saying that everything that they were doing was in an effort to get rid of these undesirable Black people in their neighborhood. So this is exactly what they were doing. We see this with articles that are coming out, investigation of Wells Fargo. It was a massive transfer of personal wealth away from minorities, Black, brown, and lower income white people. So what they were doing was taking these blighted areas of homes and reselling them to investors. And then they lifted the cap on who could buy these houses. It used to be you had to live in Michigan to buy a house in Flint. Now anybody can buy a house where someone has been moved out and foreclosed upon, and you can buy that house and turn it into a rental. So they took the entire community, upended it, and allowed investors to come in and buy up all the houses there, right? So that was the lesson we were supposed to learn from Flint years ago. And it seems like we didn't, because it's happening again all across the country, right? So
And
Andy,
we also have to point out that as far as the Flint story is concerned, those people are still dealing with poison water, right? Like,
yeah,
we have to realize that problem never went away. It's still there, right? And so the overall question we have to ask ourselves about why this is all occurring and why it's significant. And you just have to look at, what large corporations actually want to do within the state of Michigan, right? Because if you have a situation in Michigan where homes are basically specifically in the Flint area, worth nothing, okay, then people can't sell them to other people because people will not want to come and live there, right? There's not a lot of people in the US that can move from state to state anyways because of, the instances of poverty. And we know how little money people have, especially right now during the pandemic. So if you understand that they're opening the markets up to foreign investment, why would they want to come in and buy up these houses in places where you don't have clean drinking water? And that's a very interesting reason. And I think we should probably get into that a little bit more. However, we have a lot to talk about, so I'm not gonna take up the time with that.
yeah, and this is really, we're just scratching the surface on a lot of this information. So I want to make that point clear. There is so much here, and I will post the links as we go through some of this so that you can read the articles we're touching on, find more information about the things we're talking about here, especially when it comes to a moratorium on evictions for rent and a moratorium on shutoffs for your utilities. So all right, we set this up for a nationwide examination. And we've highlighted how landlords themselves have been put in the middle and are being used as a tool to further complicate things with renters, right? All right. So we have the CDC who came out with a notice that because we are entering technically the second, or in some cases third wave of the COVID pandemic, that rent evictions of people will actually exacerbate the problem. So the CDC said we need to have a moratorium on it, right? They didn't say rent strike. So everyone who are not able to pay now is going to come due at some point. We call that a balloon payment. And you'll have to work out a payment plan with your landlord. But they want you to stay in place, kind of shelter in place. So the CDC issued their notification, and a lot of states actually took them up on it. Didn't exactly release funds. Some states had funds, like one that we're going to talk about today, Illinois, had $300 million available. 300 million to you and I sounds like a lot, but when we're talking about 30,000, 16,000 and more households who need assistance right now, that's not a lot of money. And we're talking about people all across the state. So what happens if you don't win the lottery by getting your application into the state and getting some funds to help you? And what if you only get funding to help with 1 month? What do you do with the next month, right? So we can still see employment is extraordinarily high, and the extra money from CARES has all but expired, right? And oh, by the way, Congress is now on vacation. They've all gone home. So the HEROES Act is not on the table. They're still negotiating it. Pelosi's 48 hours expired last week on Tuesday. Nothing happened, right? And we saw also Mitch McConnell, where his own staffers are coming out and saying that he himself didn't want anything to happen before the election. So here we are yet again, where people are having trouble making ends meet. Right. So let's go into the next one, Andy. These are the states. There are two organizations that I looked up that I had not been familiar with, and they provided a really nice resource for people to look up where your state falls, not only in eviction moratorium, but in utility shutoffs. And these two organizations are non-for-profit. They work with state governments and the federal to help make sure that all the states are in alignment. And if, someone in a state like Illinois doesn't know how to do these things, they help them along and give them, partner them with like Tennessee and New Jersey and other states that have done a utility shutoff moratorium, so that all the states are actually looking out for their own people. And what I found when I was looking into both of these organizations that have provided the information is they tend to favor policies that help lower income Americans. So it is my initial blush look at these two organizations that they're worth a look. And the information that they provided, I found was incredibly helpful. So this first one, NIDA, has an outline of which states actually have complied with the shutoff. And what I found was 33 states on their list are actually not in compliance yet. So one of the states that we're going to talk about today is Illinois. Illinois, it's a Democratic, it's a blue state. How is this happening? How is this even possible? That's kind of, the conversation that we have had. In my own experience in Illinois may be blue, but it's not liberal, right?
It's like that dress, right? It appears blue, but it also appears other colors.
Right. And that's exactly right. And then if you go through this list, the graphic that Andy put up right now, you can see the number of states where you're like, wait a second, these are supposed to be Democratic strongholds. These have Democratic governors. Why aren't they in compliance? Why is Tennessee in better compliance to protect their own people than other states that are supposedly blue? What's going on here? Well, you have the organizations from the utilities that are getting the ear of the governors or the state legislatures, and their voices are being heard more than the people themselves. So why does this matter? If you have an eviction moratorium, but you don't have a utility shutoff moratorium, what happens? Well, let's discuss what happened in Flint with the water. Just because you have an eviction moratorium because you can't pay your rent or your mortgage does not necessarily protect you if you have a utility shutoff, particularly in the states where you're entering into winter and you have colder weather. If you don't have electricity, now you have a public health crisis, and there are laws still in the books that are enforceable to evict you from that property for health reasons. Okay, everybody got that? So on one hand, you have a moratorium on evictions for non-payment of your rent, but you are not necessarily protected from an eviction because a utility has been shut off, right? And this is at the same time where we have all of these students. A lot of these states are shutting down again because we've entered the second wave, and we have students who are already struggling to keep up because of bad internet and all of these other things. Now we're getting ready to turn off the lights. We're getting ready to turn off water. We're getting ready to turn off heat. And then all of these places are being inundated with people trying to file for unemployment, file for benefits, file for assistance. You are now competing with hundreds of thousands of your neighbors who are also applying. That has an effect, right? So, and we already talked about this lottery that they're going to do in Illinois for people who need the help. What happens if you're not one of the lucky few? Now what, right?
Mm.
So
are they going to call it Powerball or Power Blue Ball? I don't know.
Keep it PG, Andy.
Why? Only in your mind. In your mind.
Right? It's Friday. It's Friday. So let's go on to the next map and the next organization that we were talking about here. So I did post the links to all of these pieces, and I'll make sure that they're in the header of the replay as we go through. But this is yet another non-for-profit organization that is also trying to help the states coordinate so that the people most in need are getting the assistance that they require right now. This is not this is non-negotiable. The lives are at stake here. So this is another nice map from NARUC, and I'll post the link to it so you can go and see it. As far as I can tell, they're keeping these maps updated pretty well. So all right, we've gone from a national level. Now we're coming down to the state level. And we can see which states are in compliance voluntarily, which states are getting ready to have their moratoriums expire for non-payment on rent, which have extended them, and all of these things. So we're talking about Illinois in particular, and I know that Illinois has just extended their moratorium on rent evictions. They are not participating in the moratorium on utility shutoffs. And what I found was really exciting is their activists, and Alex was one of them who reached out to me. Alex and the rest of the people who are coordinating this, they're just average citizens, moms and dads, renters who are like, hey, this isn't right. So here's what they started doing. They started organizing, and they started pushing back on their own governor, in this case, J.B. Pritzker, who kept telling everybody on news media and everything else, there's nothing I can do. I'm at the limit of my gubernatorial powers. I can't do anything. So Andy, I know you have a video. Can you cue that up? This is what happened on the pushback for J.B. Pritzker.
Yes, the Urbana City Council is calling on the governor to enact a mandatory utility moratorium. This comes after the council passed a resolution calling the utility shutoffs a safety risk.
This has caused a great deal of anxiety for us.
Aaron Umbarger understands the anxiety of those who are struggling right now to pay their utility bills.
I think that coupled with the issues that we've had with IDES, a lot of people have had issues with IDES in terms of receiving unemployment benefits, has made things feel pretty uncertain and kind of grim. He's a parent whose child is learning remotely and has concerns for other families experiencing shutoffs. Yeah, they don't understand what's going on. They don't have any control over it. Have no say in it. It's confusing and it's heartbreaking. According to the Illinois Commerce Commission, ComEd and Ameren filing and notice reports were received October 15th. More than 16,000 people were disconnected in September. Governor Pritzker states that it is not in his power to enact a mandatory moratorium on utility shutoffs.
So I don't have the ability to simply put a moratorium in place like that. What we did do was go to the ICC and have them work with all of the utilities to try to get them to put a moratorium on shutoffs.
In fact-checking under emergency powers of the governor, point 12, it says the governor can control, restrict, and regulate materials, goods, or services, which is what governors have enacted in Kentucky and New Jersey.
Well, actually, I was surprised to hear him say he didn't have the power to do that.
Urbana City Council passed a resolution Monday night to take measures to protect the public's health, calling on the governor to enact a mandatory moratorium and looking at legal options to prevent utility shutoffs in Urbana. Mayor Marlin hand-delivered that resolution herself.
Maintaining housing and heat and water is critically important.
Was that Pritzker or Jackie Gleason?
With the comedy act that he's got going on, I can see why you're confused.
Whoa!
Right, exactly. He's a hell of an actor, and we wish him well on his investigation where he's up on tax fraud. So anyway, rather than talking about how this all transpired and how DuPage County is starting to push back, let's bring on somebody now, our guest here, Nick Dodson, to explain exactly what they're doing on the street to turn things around in Illinois. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody on your team who reached out and brought this issue to light, because it affects, as we saw, not just Illinois, but 33 different states right now today. That's millions of people.
Exactly. This affects a lot more people than maybe our neighbors, our coworkers realize. This is a lot of people that many don't see. In Springfield alone, we've got 22% of residents 30 days or more behind on utilities. That's just in Springfield, okay? That's 11,000 households of 48,000. That's insane. So literally coming together, Alan Axelrod is, definitely ramrodding this, we'll say. And we've got 46, I believe, organizations signed on to the campaign, trying to organize, disrupt, educate, and advocate for one another. Because really, this is the thing at the base core of protecting our most vulnerable people in our society. As the progressive of the highest in our state, you'd think that would be the priority, protecting that humanitarian effort. And we're kind of finding that that's not the case, maybe for a couple of different reasons.
Okay, well, I thought it was interesting that you had, in that clip that we saw from a local news media, they were fact checking the governor. That's incredibly rare, right?
I was so impressed by a lot of different things that came out of that story. Number one, Taylor Deckert of Fox, Illinois, fact checking him on the spot and really kind of showing, oh, hey, maybe I'm not so accurate on what I'm saying. You can see him caught in the lie. Everybody can. And, I voted for JB against Rauner. I'll be completely honest, but I can say when he's on bullshit and when he's not. You know what I mean? And clearly he was lying. So I thought it was incredibly awesome of Taylor to call him out on the spot. And then in her news reporting, I'll go ahead and say again that point 12, the governor has control of and to restrict, regulate materials, goods, and services. That's quantitative, man. You can't say anything about it. So I was just so impressed by that. And furthermore, Julie, I forget her last name, the mayor of Champaign, Urbana rather, handing the letter from the city council on such a thing. Like it's really bringing it to light that it matters a lot more. And the media picking it up and running with it a little bit has really done a lot of a great service to people in our society that need it the most right now.
That it's truly amazing. So let's back up a little bit. You guys now are starting to break through the information ceiling here, but it wasn't always the case. How did you guys get to this point from just, hey, this isn't right, to having a mayor of a major city in Illinois push back on your behalf?
Sure. So a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from a lot of really incredible people. We've got so many different folks in lots of different organizations and conversations, and a lot of Facebook organizing, to say the least. A lot of emailing, a lot of calls, a lot of texts, but really just continually advocating and advocating from Mr. Axelrod on the internet and Twitter has really brought a local attention to it, to where more activists are becoming more aware of it in our area, to where he just doesn't stop broadcasting. And when we don't stop broadcasting, if that's the continual message, hey, this matters, he's really dinging the alarm. And we are all trying to ding the alarm to make sure that everyone's aware. So really, it's once people kind of see, oh, that's what's going on right now, that's wrong. This isn't okay. How can I help? That says something that we have 46 other organizations that want to be a part of it. And truly, over the last several months, we've done any kind of actions we can to bring attention to it. I wrote a letter to JB's Chicago and Springfield office and mailed it, never heard back. We had a disruption at one of the events saying no airman shutoffs, and it shut down one of his questionings earlier. It's just, all across the state, we can coordinate. It's no longer an era where we just have to sit by and not participate in our democracy. And we're showing that to people on a hyper local level. The Central Illinois cares about the whole state as well. So there's always this divide of the Chicago and the downstate, and that's bullshit to me. I care, and Alan cares, and everybody in our group just wants the people that are here to be taken care of. We don't want people to suffer. These are our brothers, my uncles, my loved ones that are suffering. I know people that have had their utility shut off. I love people that have had their utility shut off, and this isn't okay. So it's something I'm very, very passionate about.
I think it's interesting that you brought up the divide between Chicago and the rest of Illinois, because that is always a pervasive argument. But for those who are not familiar with Illinois, Illinois is an agricultural state. Illinois produces enough food to feed the entire country every year twice. So when we're talking about the shutoffs, particularly in downstate or in the western part of the state, those are your family farmers, right? So there's a cause and effect here that goes exponentially. So it's not just in Chicago with the workforce that is the economic engine of the state. We're talking about the rural areas too. And if you haven't been paying attention, and you live out of Illinois, you're going to see the effect of this at your dining room table in the coming months, right? So this story is so much bigger than just Illinois and what's going on there. So if I'm in Iowa or Nebraska or New Mexico and I want to duplicate the effort that you're doing here in Illinois, how do I do that? What do you suggest?
Start. Just at the base, you have to put your feet to the floor and say, I'm ready to do something about it. If you've got one or two friends that want to do it, acknowledge it. Say something about it, and now you've done it. You've begun organizing the basic levels of saying, I care, I'm going to advocate, I want to step up for my community. And really just start advocating. If you message us, if you literally just on Twitter, you can hit up elect Nick Dodson or 213 Axelrod, message us, direct message us. And there's a multitude of us on there as well that will be glad to help give direction, things we've done, organizational ideas. We are greater than I. If we can shut this and bring this down on a national level of attention, it's going to only expedite the process. You know, it's getting colder. There's thick frost out down here in Sangamon County today. I don't know about up there, but it's getting very, very cold, and it's getting scarier and scarier as we let the days go by. So on a way to organize, we would be more than glad to give the directions we've had, the actions we've had, the methods we've taken. We're an open book. We would share every aspect of this gladly. We're in a part of our timeline that we need to give hope to one another. And if we could help pass that torch to somebody else, like say, hey, New Mexico, we love you too. Go do your thing. We're your cheerleaders. We're your biggest allies. We may have the hashtag no airman shutoff, but maybe you've got another utility company out there. You create a hashtag, you start talking about it. I know it seems kind of silly, but if that's what we have to do from our homes to be safe, to advocate, to create momentum, to just have others see what we're caring about and want to talk about, we'll help broadcast you. I know I will. I don't shut up about things I care about to maybe a fault.
No, this is perfect, especially while everybody is kind of sequestered away. These things kind of fall by the wayside. But here's my question for you and your organizers, and this is a tough one. So you are at the front line at the very beginning of this fight, where you're simply asking, please don't shut off utilities. However, we're starting to see the headlines come out about 2021, January, February, particularly in Illinois, where you have, 30,000 people who are facing eviction in February for a lack of payment for their mortgages and rents. And then now they're going to have this balloon payment for utility shutoffs. So that seems like your fight is just beginning. Have you guys thought about that?
You know, that's a great point, and I think it all kind of affects one another. I'm a member of a Central Illinois Workers and Tenants Rights Association as well, and it's just a group of, again, some people that care about one another, and there are just so many people that don't understand even basic level rights of living tenant rights, workers' rights. There's so many aspects of it that I feel like even just doing this advocates for one another on a bigger scale. If we start talking about this stuff, the working class people that might be taking advantage of and really having the hardest time in this, with unemployment, with sickness, with remote learning and bills blooming, it's really going to be hard to get through this. But picking one fight, digging at it, going hard as we can at it, and advocating at it can't hurt at this level. But you're right. This is it'll be a fight that won't end. You're exactly right. Once the advocation is done, it will be a shift in posture onto another one. This won't be a job that we'll just say, all right, the work's done now kind of a thing. It will be all right, we got that part done. What's next? It might, it will be a reposture of sorts, in my opinion, more than anything. The fight will continue.
I'm glad to hear it. And speaking of the fight continuing, you're running for office, correct?
Right. Yeah, I am. I'm running for Sangamon County Board down here in Springfield. I am reluctant to be a politician. However, I was on Facebook one day in September last year, and I saw the local Democrats posted that 109 of 125 seats were unopposed. That's crazy. So I messaged them and said, is this serious? Is this real? Because that seemed ludicrous to me, that nobody down here has the grit to even try. So long story short, at that point, it wasn't right for me. And I told them it wasn't. I had some meetings with a couple of them and thought about it. And I was like, this isn't what I need. Fast forward to the first wave of the quarantine, and particularly the day that Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race. I lost a lot of hope in a lot of different things. I had a lot of friends pushing me to potentially run. And we were at a point where I wasn't working either. And I was like, you know what? If I've got no work right now, I need to be at least working for something. So I started the campaign. And oddly enough, I started working again, so I wasn't able to do, nonstop. But it's been a lot of learning. I've met a lot of really cool people, and honestly, I'm trying to broadcast for people down here, specifically in the working class, that are food service, hospitality professionals, not the particular good old boys club that you see on the county board level. And I'm trying to broadcast to them and say, hey, you can be a part of this process. You need to be a part of this process. So just really trying to learn and grow as I do it a little bit, we'll say the least, because I've never been a part of something like this.
Well, thank you for stepping up. And I will say, having been a candidate myself, once you learn the lesson and figure out how it works, you have that with you forever.
Right.
And can pass that on. So,
right.
So how do people get in touch with you, not only for the work that you're doing in advocacy, but maybe to support your campaign and get involved in Central Illinois?
Yeah, sure. So I've got a great Facebook page set up at Elect Nick Dodson. I've got my Twitter as Elect Nick Dodson and a website as electnickdodson.com. So there's a lot of great information on there. I'm very transparent. You can see my platform is very, very straightforward. I'm running on wanting transparency and accountability in the county board. Currently, it takes 5 days before the meeting to even be able to address the county board in Sangamon County. So that's just a beautiful thing, to kiss the ring before you may address us. So I just, it doesn't seem right to me. And the gentleman I'm running against was appointed to the position 13 years ago and has never been opposed. That's 13 years, never opposed to an appointed position. What? It's ridiculous. So at least anything, I can be an alternative option for the area. I'm involved in a lot of different groups down here in Springfield. The Springfield Immigrants Advocacy Network is one that I'm very, very close with. Obviously, the No Ameren Shutoff is what I've been very close with lately. Moving Pillsbury Forward is a group that I'm was very active before COVID and working on removing a fossil of industry down here. We had a huge Pillsbury plant that shut down 20 years ago, full of asbestos and wonderful chemicals to leach into our land after the capital had been pulled from the community. Then, nonetheless, the building was sold to someone that transported metal that was leaching asbestos over state lines. So that gentleman did 5 years in prison. He just got out of prison and wanted to get a junkyard in Sangamon County. And guess who approved him to get a junkyard in Sangamon County? The Sangamon County Board. Here we are. So it all kind of ties back into one another.
Now, wait a
Wheels on the
second.
bus go round and round.
Right.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the pipeline, the dang it, why does the name escape me? The tar sands pipeline, doesn't that come into Illinois right around your area?
Yeah, a little bit south of here. Absolutely, it does. And I'm a member of the Sierra Club as well, and that's one of the things they're pushing for right now. Is there's a lot going on down here. There's a new power plant being secretly pushed through in Pondee right now that's going to have very, very low efficiency in an area in a time that we don't need a new natural gas plant. They're trying to expedite this right now. There's a lot going on down here that's environmental justice related that gets pushed to the wayside, maybe because it's just the Southern Illinois people. It don't matter down there. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So it's we have to keep pushing for at least some of this environmental awareness, because it's I feel like I'm like a relic of my time. When I was a kid, there used to be these shows once a month. They'd show us, it was about environmentalism in school. And occasionally they'd show us I loved Captain Planet, to be completely honest. I was a huge Captain Planet growing up. In this day and age, seeing all this stuff going on, it's this is the zenith of everything I learned as a kid going on in my freaking backyard. We have we just shut down the coal-fired ash plant, or going to, here in Springfield, and there's just the water runoffs and everywhere, all over. It's this is one of the most beautiful parts of our country, and we're just dumping on it over and over and over again. So yes, there's a lot of issues with that going on down here. And actually, we just started a Southern downstate group of the Our Revolution, Illinois, to focus on environmental justice and Green New Deal items down here specifically. That's going to be something we're going to be pushing for. So if anybody in Central Illinois is interested in organizing for environmental justice and pollution, et cetera, the Our Revolution Downstate Illinois group is going to be advocating that in a big way coming up very soon. We've just kind of started forming a little bit recently.
Perfect. This is perfect. So I think if nothing else, the story talks about how you don't have to wait for a hero. You don't have to believe that the election coming up is going to solve everything. Oh, obviously, we hope you get elected.
Right.
But you as an individual person with all your flaws and limitations can make a difference. And all you need to do is reach out and start asking questions and start moving forward. So we really appreciate you coming on to talk about the work that you're doing and your campaign. We got a twofer here. So Andy, before we get out of here, any closing questions? Because I'm just so thrilled with all the work that they're doing. I don't know how to express my gratitude.
Well, I find it, that this is just part of across not only counties and states, but right across the United States of the grassroots progressive style movement that's happening from the ground up. It's this foundation that we talk about that's responsible for starting to make positive changes for people, right? Because which is as important as the talk of a third party or the Green Party or whatever, that this is the multi-pronged attack at the corporate class that control everything. And that's really important when we talk about these types of initiatives that Nick's talking about, right? It's really important, and especially this one, because I don't think this is obviously a nonpartisan issue. We're not talking about people taking sides, whether they believe that utility evictions are a good thing or a bad thing. I think this is basically just the fact that people don't know about it. And if they do know about it, they'll be as enraged about it as everyone else that does know about it, right? So I think that that's why this is really important, that we get the word out there to people across the country so that they know that the devil that they're fighting, because it's the misinformation and the lack of information that is going to get people thrown into the streets during the winter months, right? Let's not forget, especially in a place like Illinois, right, where it has a little bit of a cold winter in January and February. I should know, I'm an expert. So that's hugely important. And so I am grateful for your initiative, Nick, and what you're doing. I'll just end my little rant here with a quote from a socialist from way back, from decades ago, a fellow by the name of August Bebel, who said that on one side you have the left, on the other side you have the right, and in the middle you have the swamp. And my addition to that is, unfortunately, Illinois politicians are good swimmers.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So Nick, any final thoughts from you before we get out of here this morning?
I just want to let anybody that might be watching this know that you are the leader you're waiting for. No one's going to come save you. You need to wake up and realize it's time to help one another. And if you can, do it.
Excellent. Excellent. And with that, we will get out of here, and we'll make sure that we post information so you can get in contact with Nick and Mr. Axelrod, who's working this morning. Good morning. We'll make sure that you have all the information you need to duplicate their efforts and learn from them so that you can enact these same strides in your own state. So thank you everyone for tuning in this morning. Thank you, Nick, for joining us. Good luck on your upcoming election, just days away. Get back on the phone banking.
That's right. That's right. Heading to it.
Excellent. Excellent. So for everyone else, thank you so much for joining us all this week. We have had so many great conversations. Check them out on our website, our Facebook page, on our Twitter, and we will have more coming up for you in the coming week. In particular, we're going to do a replay of Brandon's commentary from Tuesday, because it is just so vital that we understand how in the context of fascism and the strategy of dividing, how we approach it as individuals and how we can counteract it and maintain a focus so that we are not fighting each other and we are actually working on advocacy for our neighbors. So that'll be coming out this evening. Make sure you tune in for that. And if you have a story or a tip that you want us to cover, obviously we're not corporate media. We have no problem digging into the nuances of it and finding the information and bringing that to you. So from all of us here at DLF, thank you so much, and make sure you have a good, safe weekend.
Thanks, Kerri. You too. Take care.
We bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog, we keeping it G. Whoa.